And we are live. Welcome to this week's episode of MicroConf on Air. I'm your host, Rob Walling, and I'm listening to two simultaneous playing theme songs. Every Wednesday, we live stream for 30 minutes, and we cover topics related to building and growing ambitious SaaS startups that bring us freedom, purpose, and allow us to value and maintain healthy relationships. We strive to build real businesses with real customers who pay us real money, and we do it all while not burning ourselves out working crazy hours. This is the lens through which we view building and growing successful startups. Welcome. The video you saw at the top of the show is talking about the State of Independent SaaS survey that we're currently running. It runs for about another week. And if you haven't already filled out, it takes about 6 to 8 minutes, it seems, this year. If you have a SaaS app, a recurring software product that is doing at least $1 a month in MRR, would love to have your input and your metrics. It's all anonymous, and it allows us to put together this really solid, strong report that covers our type of SaaS, not the venture-funded SaaS that needs to go big, go home, or go public, or go bust. It's really the independent, the bootstrapped, and mostly bootstrapped SaaS. So stateofindysaas.com to check out that survey. And again, it's 6 or 8 minutes. And if you haven't seen the report from last year, it's really solid. It's like 75 pages. You can go to the MicroConf website if you want to check out what we crank out there. All types of metrics and benchmarks and numbers about, hiring and team size and all kinds of stuff. So check that out, stateofindysaas.com. Today, we are diving into diversifying tech as a service. And my guest today is Veni Kunche. And you can head to DiversifyTech.co to see what she's built over the past 2 years after attending MicroConf Starter Edition in 2018. And she was inspired by attending MicroConf and decided to launch DiversifyTech. And she has grown it to more than $10,000 in monthly revenue, which is super, super impressive. So I'll be talking with her in just a minute. Vani is a developer, a maker, and a founder. After working as a software engineer for 15 years, she launched DiversifyTech to help make the tech industry more inclusive. DiversifyTech connects underrepresented people in tech to opportunities, and it also helps companies hire them. So back in 2017, Vani was awarded one of MicroConf Starter Scholarships, and I believe she attended the 2018 Vegas. We were trying to figure out which year it was. Probably not that important, but a starter, event. We have our starter and our growth events, and she attended a couple years ago. We're going to take a look at how things have changed for her after attending MicroConf Starter and being inspired to start DiversifyTech. So, Vani, welcome so much to MicroConf on Air. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great. It's going to be a good conversation today. So DiversifyTech, for folks who can't get over the website, your H1 is a collection of resources for underrepresented people in tech. And, as I was saying in the intro, you help underrepresented people find job opportunities, and then you also help companies hire folks that are underrepresented. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yes. Initially, I started it as a way for people to find opportunities like events in tech, scholarships, and so on, because sometimes opportunities are there, but they may not be shared in the right networks. So I wanted to make sure that, people who are underrepresented also had, knew about them.
Yeah. And so what mechanism do you use to do that? Do you have a job board, I presume? And then I know you have an email newsletter. How does all that tie in? Maybe give us the 30,000 foot view.
Yeah. So what you're looking at right now, I set it up as a directory of resources. So you can click on any of those categories and you can find opportunities like speaking opportunities or events or communities specifically for underrepresented people. And along with that, I also have a job board where companies can post their jobs. And it's slightly different from other job boards in that I ask companies to kind of give more insight into their teams. For example, I ask them how many people of color are on your tech teams, how many disabled folks are on your tech team, because I want my members to come in and take a look and see, if how they're doing and if they feel like they can be part of that company.
Yeah. And I want to call to the audience. If you have any questions for Vani about her experience or about DiversifyTech, please do post them to YouTube or into the MicroConf on air Slack channel in MicroConf Connect. If you're not in MicroConf Connect, you should head to microconfconnect.com. We have crested 1,500 founders and aspiring founders in Connect, and it's really a great community. And Vani, you're part of that as well. So thanks for participating. So you attended MicroConf Starter a couple years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and talk a little bit about kind of the the inspiration or what just made you decide
Yeah.
to start DiversifyTech. But one thing that we've done with Starter, and actually my co-founder Mike Tabor was really the spearhead behind this, and I'm really glad we did it, is developing our scholarship program, which allows us to offer free tickets to folks who might not otherwise be able to attend or might not otherwise attend a MicroConf. So I'm curious, how did you find out? Because you came on the scholarship program. How did you find out about it?
Mm-hmm. I think I was part of the MicroConf's mailing list already, and I'm part of the Mega Maker community that Justin Jackson runs. And they were all talking about, I think in 2017, a lot of the people in the community were thinking about going to MicroConf, and they were chatting, and I had major FOMO because I wanted to go, but at that time I was pregnant. So I was like, not possible this year. And then in 2018, I saw, it was the first time I heard of the scholarship, and I, had to think about it a little bit because I had just given birth. My daughter was like 4 months old. I was like, should I go do this? And then I said, I'm going to apply. If I get it, I'm going to go. So it was kind of exciting to see it. And I applied and I got the scholarship. And and it was a great experience. At the time, I was actually working on 2 different ideas. And coming in, I kind of wanted to talk to a lot of people to figure out which one I kind of should focus on. And I did get that opportunity. I talked to people who were working on similar things, or asked them about, just talk through what I was working on and heard their thoughts. So at the end of the conference, it kind of gave me some clarity on which path I should take.
Were you were looking at 2 different things? Was one of them DiversifyTech?
It was actually something similar. I used to run a newsletter called Code with Veni, which was to help women get into tech. I was working on that, and at that time I already had about 2,000 subscribers, and I was getting sponsorships. But at that time, I didn't think of it as a business because as a software engineer, I was thinking software, I was thinking product,
Right.
things like that. So when was growing this newsletter, but I didn't think of it as a business till I attended MicroConf. I actually had office hours with Patrick, and I actually asked him, like, he was between the 2 ideas. I shared the 2 ideas, and he was like, "Oh, you should work on the women in tech one." And as I asked him, like, "Is a newsletter a business?" And he said, "Yes." You can find sponsors, and you can monetize. So I think it was good to hear somebody who was experienced say that to me.
Right. Yeah. And Patrick, for those who don't know, that's Patrick McKenzie, Patio 11. So wise advice. So talk to me then, tell us a little bit about your decision to build and launch, or I guess it sounds like you kind of pivoted into version 1 of DiversifyTech. So the decision, it sounds like a lot of MicroConf folks spoke to that and made you want to go after the women in tech. But I'm curious, what was the pivot to make it wider, and what was the, the process like?
Yeah, when I ran Code with Veni newsletter, which was specifically for women in tech, I think I learned a lot from it. I made a lot of mistakes. I did learn a lot from it, and I kind of used all of those learnings. And I made it not just for women in tech, but I wanted to include more underrepresented people. So queer folks in tech. So I wanted to make sure that it includes a lot more people. So that's why I kind of pivoted off from just women in tech to more broader underrepresented people. And also, I wanted it to be more focused on opportunities. Code with Veni was more inspiration. So I would share stories about, there are women in tech, and this is how they're doing. One of the things I learned is that that's already out there. There's a lot of things going on to inspire women to get into tech, or underrepresented people to get in tech, but there wasn't a lot going on at that time to actually work on the next step. Okay, you're inspired, you want to get into tech. Now what? Like, where do you find the opportunities? Which companies are good for you? So I pivoted to focusing more on that, on the opportunities part of it. And for my first version, I made it pretty simple. I said, I'm going to I just took an Airtable table and listed a bunch of scholarships. And I said, I'm going to start a newsletter. I'm going to be sharing these resources. If you're interested, sign up. And I shared it with my Code with Veni subscribers. I shared it on Twitter. It was mostly a test to see, what I thought would be useful, would be good for people, and it did. I think I got to 500 subscribers pretty fast, and that was kind of the first version, which kind of led to more.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. So you get to 500 really fast, and it was just about scholarships. Was it scholarships to events?
Yes, at that time, so now we're in COVID times, but previously to get to conferences, it was pretty expensive for flights,
Hmm.
for the actual tickets. So I was sharing scholarships that conferences were already offering, like similar to MicroConf, how you
Hmm.
offered a free ticket to the event. So other tech events were offering free tickets. Some were also offering like travel, things like that. So I
Hmm.
compiled a list of all the things they could find, and I would share those.
Very cool. And then essentially 18, give or take 18 months later, you were able to quit your day job. Is that right? And you said you kind of had a number in mind that you wanted to hit in
Yeah.
revenue in order to be able to do that. You want to talk us through that?
Yes. So in April of 2018, I think that's when I attended MicroConf. Like in May is when I kind of like launched the first MVP to see if there was any interest. And at that time, I just worked on growing the community to make sure that people are interested, that I'm giving them the resources they want. And then towards the end of that year in 2018 is when I really thought about monetization. I was like, I'm onto something, but in order to be sustainable, you have to make money somehow. So that's when I explored, different ways of monetization, and then I settled on running a job board. And for the first time, I actually didn't know, like, my customers were going to be recruiters, people who are interested in diversity and inclusion, but I did not have that network. So what I did was I actually built the job board and launched on Product Hunt to see if, and I wanted to validate the other part of it. So I launched in Product Hunt, and that's where I got my first few customers. And another thing I did along with the launch was I have a newsletter for underrepresented people in tech. I also said, if you're interested in a newsletter that talks about diversity and inclusion for people who are interested to learn more, please sign up here. And at that time, I didn't know if people would be interested, but over time, that just kind of grew. Like people were subscribing, and I hadn't actually started it yet. At one point, somebody asked me, like, "Hey, I'm not getting emails from this," and I was like, "Oh, shoot, I really should, work on this." So that's when then I started doing a newsletter for people who are interested in diversity inclusion. So I had both of these going at the same time, and I basically started, talking about the job board in the newsletter. That's where I started getting more customers from that side too. And end of last year is when I kind of got to around 2,500 per month on the job board, and it was also getting tough to manage it part time. That's when I kind of talked with my family and said, I think I'm going to work on this full time. So yeah, since beginning of this year, I've been working full time on it.
That's great. And then, so it took you about 18 months to get to 2,500. And then we have a tweet. I think producer Sandra might be able to pull it up, but we'll certainly link to it in show notes. You have a tweet where you say, I feel uncomfortable talking about money. This is from last month. I feel uncomfortable talking about money, but I'm happy to share that DiversifyTech crossed $10,000 in monthly revenue. It happened in June. So that was basically almost 6 months later. So it was 18 months to 2,500 and 6-ish months to 10K. I told
Mhm.
myself that it's probably just a fluke, but it has been happening consistently since then. So I guess I should believe it. So tell us that story. How do you quadruple in 6 months? What was the driving factor?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, 2020 has been a wild year with
Yep.
the pandemic, with Black Lives Matter movement. A lot has been going on. So I quit my job in December of last year. In January, things were consistent. Everything was going well. And then once the pandemic hit, my job board actually literally just dropped to like 250 or something that month. And I worried for like a month. I'm like, I think I chose the wrong time to quit my job to go into this. But I had some friends who were, using the job board. They said, people are just scared right now because they're reacting to the pandemic. Just give it time, things will pick up. So I kept, doing what I was doing, maintaining what was going on, and then, a lot of things with the Black Lives Matter movement started, which unfortunate that that's what it took for people to realize what's going on in our country. And because of that, people started looking for things to do, to how to diversify their companies and things like that. And prior to that, as I was working on DiversifyTech, my members would often ask me like, how can I support you? How can I help you? And I would tell them, if you can tell companies about us, that'd be great. That's what I would always ask in return. And when this happened, companies were seeking for something like what I was building. So all of my members were basically recommending me recommending DiversifyTech to all these companies, and that kind of took off from there.
Yeah.
So I think it was a matter of people looking for what I built at that time.
Sure. Yeah, a little bit of quite a bit of hard work, some luck and some skill, right? All go into this type of stuff. And so is the majority of your revenue then from the job board, or because I know you also have kind of patrons who I think commit, it's like a donation or like a support, structure.
Yeah.
And then I believe you have sponsors for your email newsletter as well. Okay. But the
Yes.
majority is from the job board.
Yes. So I have patrons and I have sponsorships, and I also do ads in the newsletter itself. But majority is from the job board.
Right. Very cool. Yeah.
So
The
the
B2B
10K that I
channels.
was, yeah,
Go ahead.
the 10K that I tweeted about is just from the job board.
Oh, got it. Oh man, so you're above 10K. That's congratulations. That's really cool. I mean, there's a little bit of right place at the right time. Even though it's a difficult time, but at least there was a resource for people to go to. Like that's the way I look at it. You've filled this gap of, where else would people have gone to try to engage with the Black Lives Matter and try to diversify tech. And I think you've chosen a really good name for for your company. And I think it's obvious that you have struck a nerve and filled a need, a pretty dire need that in 2 years getting to 10K a month and kind of building a community almost from scratch in that amount of time is without a big content push or without a big ad budget or without any funding. Like it's something to really should really feel good about that. Like it's super impressive. And job boards are famous for being these I'll say just very stable sources of revenue. I know when there's downturns, people hire less, and yes, it can drop off. But for InDesire tech workers, it's pretty rare that there's months and months and months when no one wants to hire them. So it is such a stable, I think, going to be a stable piece for you. I'm curious if you, at this point, if you have plans to expand your offerings, because right now, I know you have, as we saw on your homepage, you have 9 different things or whatever that you kind of offer. Do you have additional things that you are looking to build out and expand into, or are you just, putting all your weight behind, what you have today?
In terms of expansion, I've actually been getting a lot of customers from Europe. They want something to reach underrepresented people in Europe. And unfortunately, like I built the community. I focused all of my energy in the US. So it's not very international. So at this time, I'm actually turning away customers from Europe. So my next thing is going to be, I think, do the same thing, but for the European market. And I'm thinking of doing pretty much repeating the same thing. I don't think I'll have the energy to do it all by myself. So I'm looking to partner with somebody else who can do what I'm doing, but just for the European market. So I think that'll be the next thing.
Yeah, and that was a question I was going to ask is, as a solo founder, you're doing a lot here because this is not just hey, I built a software product and people onboard themselves and stuff happens. I imagine there's a lot going into it. Are there any processes or any specific things you've done that have helped you streamline your operations to be able to run this fairly complex business on your own?
One of the things I did differently when I started this was not overtake it, I guess.
Hmm.
I started out very simple. And as I find myself doing the same thing over and over again, then I would automate it. So on the surface, it's a simple site. There's a database behind it. But once a job is posted, there's a lot of manual work that I have to do because not everybody who posts actually gets to be on the job board. I look up their reviews on Glassdoor. I look up their news. So there's a lot of manual things that I have to do. So some things I've done is, okay, I get a job posting. Send myself an automated email with Glassdoor reviews I had and I also like create a email draft to send to companies of like I have two templates. Yes, your job looks great, or no. So all of that I kind of like automated using no code tools. So yeah, I kind of do everything manually to start with, and as I do the same things over and over again, I use no code tools to kind of automate it. It's a hard thing to do as a software engineer because I want to just
Yeah.
build everything from scratch, but
Yep.
the community doesn't really care what I use, not just
Right.
that, yeah.
It's the result they're looking for. Yeah. I'm curious.
Yeah.
I mean, are you looking for then companies that are diversity friendly? Is that the idea? You want to kind of verify that they're not a crappy environment or hostile environment? And I
Mhm.
guess that's the
Yeah.
first part of my question. Second part is, when you reject a company's jobs, have you ever had backlash or like a real negative response to that?
It's yeah. One of the things I try to do is kind of look on Glassdoor and I look for certain clues. If most like are they racist? If there are issues, usually I find them on Glassdoor that they're racist, the CEO is sexist, or things like that I've encountered previously. And other things I look up is in the news. For example, I recently had a posting, and some news came out just literally 2 days ago that the CEO did something that was not great. So things like that. So I have to like constantly be on the lookout for what these companies are doing. Sometimes I pay attention a lot on Twitter because underrepresented people tend to speak out a lot there. So I look for clues there. So I just search the company's name and see what's going on. Sometimes there feels like something's off. Then I actually reach out to previous employees that have left the company and ask them, I specifically reach out to underrepresented people and ask them, what was your experience like? I get to that part only if everything else, if I feel like something's off. But yeah, that's kind of the process so far. And most companies are okay with it. Most companies actually just ghost me. Like once I say, I'm sorry, I can't work with you, I never hear back from them. Some companies ask for some sort of like process to get them on the job board, which
An appeal?
uh,
They want to
yeah,
appeal?
an appeal. Yes, that's the word, an appeal. But you so far have not had that happen that much. And just yesterday, I said no to somebody, and they said, "Can we get on a call and discuss?" I'm not sure yet on how I'm going to handle that because it was the Glassdoor reviews were pretty awful for that company. So yeah, I'm trying to figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a challenge when you're curating like that and you're curating based on the kind of third party information.
Mhm.
Is Glassdoor known? I don't know much about Glassdoor. I've read
Mhm.
reviews a few times, but is it known to be relatively accurate? Like, is there a chance that someone, if they have what do you call it? Kind of a pick to bear. No, wait a minute.
Mhm.
A axe to grind. Axe to grind is the phrase. If someone had an axe to grind, could they like put a bunch of negative
Mhm.
reviews in Glassdoor?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite possible. What I've been trying to do is look only in the past 6 months or so. So
Hmm.
I don't go too far. In the past 6 months, how are they doing? And they say that Glassdoor usually does not, because sometimes I guess companies try to go to Glassdoor and have reviews removed if it's bad, but apparently Glassdoor is pretty good about that. But similar to Glassdoor, there are other ones too, which focus specifically for women and then also for underrepresented people. So I check those too. But in terms of if somebody had axe to grind and gave a bad review, I would rather not risk it, I guess. I always try to prioritize the community over the company. So it might happen, but yeah.
Sure. Cool. So maybe one or two more questions. Curious, as you were trying to like figure out monetization for DiversifyTech, I'm sure that was something that maybe was a challenge in the early days. Obviously, you've figured it out pretty well at this point. But I'm curious to hear, what have been some of your biggest challenges when it came to monetizing, and anything that was surprisingly easy.
Yeah, in terms of monetization, as we were talking, the biggest challenge was how do I monetize something where, like, I can't monetize on the underrepresented people in tech side because my whole thing is that I want to give them access to opportunities. So I can't put a paywall, for that. That goes against what I'm trying to do. So I had to figure out another way, which was, through companies. When I was running Code with Veni, one of the things that happened was I was getting a lot of sponsors, but the difficulty there was the requests always came from the marketing departments of a company. So they wanted to do more like brand management. So they wanted to sponsor to show people that they are diverse, that they are for diversity in tech. And unfortunately, what happens is that what they say may not be reality. So that's why I was like, if I focused on sponsorships, then I'm, basically being a person for the company. And that was like a difficult thing to manage. So that I didn't focus so much on that. So the job board was a good way because I made it more of an application process, similar to how candidates go and apply to companies. Companies ask a lot of information like your GPA, why do you want to work for the company, and things like that. So I kind of did the same thing. So I asked them their demographics. I asked them, why should underrepresented people in tech work at your company? So things like that. So I kind of like reversed that a little bit. And honestly, at the beginning, I didn't think any would actually fill out this really long form. But there was, I think, enough of an interest, and there were companies who did want to diversify their teams. So it helped to kind of filter out the companies that had good intentions. So I had to try quite a few different things to figure out monetization, which was good for the community too.
Yeah, I would agree. Vani, thank you so much for joining me today on MicroConf On Air. We're going to wrap up. If folks want to keep up with you, you are Vani Kunche on Twitter and DiversifyTech Co. Remember, DiversifyTech.co, and then the Twitter handle is DiversifyTech Co. And of course, I am at Rob Walling if folks want to connect with any of us. Thanks again for joining me. It's great having you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. As we wrap up, State of Independent SaaS. I mentioned at the top of the show, stateofindysaas.com. If you want to partake, I'd encourage you to do that so we can all get great numbers and interesting metrics and benchmarks to measure from. Also, thanks to Hey and Stripe for being our headline partners for the year. As I always say, they make everything we do just a little easier, and it's great to be connected with Hey and Stripe. If you haven't already subscribed, head to youtube.com/microconf. All of our new videos come out, and I will see you next Wednesday, same time, same place.